We are diving into dynasty depth charts for sleepers and busts. First up, the NFC North and NFC South. Today on the Football Guys College Football Show.
What is up, everybody? Like Jeff said, we are going to be diving into depth charts today, NFC North, NFC South, and just kind of going over from a dynasty perspective and a little redraft probably. We'll probably get into that a little bit kind of this year, what we can expect. Like just our expectations for these guys, what we're doing with them in dynasty, where are the sleepers at? Where are some of our must drafts at? Are there busts out there? And then, best injury away stash, like guys out there that will have like, hey, can they be that injury away that, hey, they can win your league that we talked about? And also one thing I want to also mention, like when we talk about these guys, what are some like, injury, not as dependent guys that could be that third running back, running back 3 that you can plug and play in PPR. There's always options like that. So we're going to be diving into those guys. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment too, only if it's positive. No, I'm kidding. You can yell at us. You guys have been yelling at us for the last few weeks. So that's fine. We like that too. Dive in there. And then check us out. If you're listening on the podcast, we appreciate you guys. If you're on YouTube and you're going to watch a little bit of it, go find us on iTunes. All major podcast platforms will be there. But let's dive into NFC North. We're going to start with the Vikings because it's all the rage right now. Alexander Mattison, but we're going to get into the depth chart. So let's go over everything that we have here. We do have ADP. And if you watch on YouTube, you're going to see the graphics, all of that as we go through it. So we have Kirk Cousins at quarterback, Nick Mullins, Jaron Hall. Shout out Christian. Running back, Alexander Mattison, Ty Chandler, Dwayne McBride, and in I'm going to mess this up. Nwangu? We'll go with that. Wide receiver, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, KJ Osborne, Jalen Naylor, and then tight end, TJ Hawkinson, and then my boy Josh Oliver sitting out there. Jeff, what is one thing that stands out to you about either the ADP, the depth chart as a whole, and then we'll dive into this fully?
Some of it is the ADP. I don't know. It depends on your source on the ADP on Alexander Mattison, because if you look at underdog ADP, he's running back 20 already up there. So it kind of depends where you pull ADP. I think the backfield's very interesting because I think a lot of people are projecting Alexander Mattison into a bell cow role similar to what Dalvin Cook accomplished. But I think that you're going to see the targets move down, the target volume move down, because the addition of Jordan Addison, having KJ Osborne there, but then also the addition to TJ Hawkinson into that offense. And I think that they're going to filter targets away from the running back position. But 2, I would not be surprised if there's a little bit more committee usage than what everybody's kind of expecting. I think Ty Chandler can earn a role there. And I even think Kenny Nwangu can get involved as kind of some, maybe jet sweeps, some different type of action there, because I know that I've heard the things that I've read out of camp were that both Chandler and Nwangu were playing pretty well in camp. And so I do think that Dwayne McBride kind of stands as everybody's kind of grabbing him as that injury away guy, as that RB 67 in this above Chandler. But I do think that Chandler can earn a passing down role, and McBride's value is likely is dependent only on Alexander Mattison out of the lineup.
Yeah. Christian, anything you see from that depth chart?
Yeah, I mean, we can keep the conversation on the running backs for just a second. So Madison, to me, is very much so a redraft over dynasty guy. He signed a 2-year deal this offseason or in free agency, but a 2-year deal with an option. He got most of the money guaranteed, but there is no guarantee that he will be the starter next year. I actually did the Vikings training camp reports last year for Football Guys, and they really liked Ty Chandler and Nwangu last year. I think that there are aspects of their game that Madison just doesn't have. I think Chandler is a better pass catcher. I think Nwangu is a better just speed guy and guy that can get chunk plays. I think Madison probably is going to get the majority of the work, and I do think that for redraft purposes, he's a good pick, assuming that he's not going to inch up into that top 15. I get a little bit nervous there, but from a dynasty perspective, I'm pretty out on even that. Now, the RB37 that we have, that was right before the Dalvin Cook news kind of hit. And obviously we haven't had time to accumulate more dynasty ADP for that. So I think that as he starts to creep up in dynasty, that's a guy that I'm just kind of staying away from entirely, especially in startups. Because I think Jeff's right. And Dwayne McBride, Here's the thing. I would not take Dwayne McBride over Chandler or Nwangwu. So I liked him as a prospect, but he's going to fumble the ball pretty much every time he touches it if his college days are indicative of any future success. So I just don't know if they'll trust him to give him even a large workload in the event that Madison gets hurt or something like that.
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway from the running back room in this one, I'm staying away in Dynasty most likely. If I have these guys, I'll try to, get some value for them. Like I did see Madison go for Tony Pollard straight up in a Dynasty league. Like that happened right after the news, and they posted it on social media, and they were very happy about it. So if that's the case, like those are the things that have been happening. Now that was right away, so like you've also seen it die down a little bit. So there is chances out there where people do see highly of Madison, and you could maybe get a first, maybe not a 24 first, but you might be able to get a 25 first, and that's kind of how those Dynasty leagues look. You guys pretty much hit out the running back room. I do want to see the wide receiver room. So like, Jordan Addison's going as wide receiver 20 right now in Dynasty drafts. He's kind of going around Quentin Johnson in that area based on some of the mocks and the Dynasty drafts that I've done. KJ Osborne is a sneaky one, I think, at wide receiver 85 because he's like that injury away stash kind of guy, but I do think he'll get used also. So like KJ is a guy that I definitely would plan on there. So what about this wide receiver room outside of that? Like Addison has a chance to kind of go up there, but if you look at like Dynasty rankings, if you go check out our new Dynasty rankings here at Football Guys, 20 to 12 is really, really impacted right now with wide receivers. And like, there is a chance, like we've seen some of these younger guys, Burks is outside of that, Jameson Williams has fallen outside of that now. Are we worried about Addison, or do you feel like wide receiver 20 to 15 is kind of like maybe not his floor, ceiling is kind of in the middle, and he still has a chance to go up, Jeff?
I guess my question on Addison, I think that he's kind of right there. I would say, yeah. I mean, there's a chance that he earns more. The biggest question that I have in this offense, and this kind of would open things up, is are they going to be playing 12 for personnel with the addition of Josh Oliver kind of as that blocking tight end, or are they going to have that 11 personnel that they've traditionally played in the Kevin O'Connell, Sean McVay scheme with KJ Osborne locking down the slot receiver? And so that's my biggest question, because I've heard some speculation that they gave Josh Oliver a pretty decent contract for a free agent for a blocking tight end. And so I have heard speculation that that's the expectation. They will play more 12 personnel. And then if that happens, then you are filtering the targets into a tighter area between, I mean, we know Justin Jefferson's going to get his, but if you're really splitting just between Addison and TJ Hawkinson, then I think you feel good on both of those guys delivering on value. The problem becomes if they play a lot of 11 personnel and if KJ Osborne is that slot, because KJ Osborne is a deceptively good player and KJ Osborne has his moments. And so if he is earning target share, if he's on the field, if he's distributing those targets, that's where you start to bring the ceiling, I think, really far down on Addison and Hawkinson, because I don't think there's any ceiling effect or anything like that with Justin Jefferson, but some of these different areas, I think where you could have the effect come in.
Yeah, I think Osborne's the best value here. I certainly think that if one of those two receivers ahead of him were to go down, I think he'd be in lineups. And I think that probably will persist, for the next couple of years there. So I think that's a good player to add. And, maybe you don't use him a whole lot, but there's always the opportunity. I mean, Addison, you don't project injuries or anything like that, but we just watched a season full of them for Jordan Addison. So I think it's worth stashing KJ Osborne as like, I could probably get some value for him later too, in that opportunity of, maybe he steps into a ton of targets. So best value. And outside of that, there's not a whole lot on this team that I'm drafting a lot, to be honest. So.
No, offensive line last year ranked 20th in pass blocking. They got to improve there. Kirk Cousins did struggle at times. The defense can't stop anybody, but they may be a little bit improved this year. I just think game script's going to be out of the question. Like, they're going to be weird. You're not going to be able to rely on that. Jeff mentioned it too with the personnel. I like Hawkinson. I think he's the best value outside based on tight end 4 where he's going. Like, if you're looking at that tight end position, I don't hate it there. Anything else before we jump on over to the Lions, Jeff?
The one thing that really would interest me is if this team falls out of it, if they really fall far out of it, if they give Jaren Hall a chance, because I think Jaren Hall is on the field. He has mobility. And so if this is a target-rich environment, if you basically put Kirk Cousins plus adding 3 to 4 or 5 rushing fantasy points on top of him, I mean, then you're really starting talking about an interesting quarterback. And so that would be the one thing that I think is kind of under the radar, very interesting about this team, what direction they decide to go at the quarterback position, if they do fall out of it, and do they give him a shot?
Yeah. Or they could just trade for Trey Lance. That would be great. Like, just do it. Come on, Vikings.
Yeah.
Just do it. Do it, please. Just trade Cousins over the Niners. They could have Cousins, Darnold, and Purdy. That is the perfect room for Shanahan and some people on social media. All right, let's jump over to the Lions. We're excited about the Lions. It's actually a fun fantasy group here. So here's our depth chart. We got Jared Goff, Hendon Hooker at quarterback, both getting drafted in the top 35 in dynasty drafts when you're looking at it. Running back, we have David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, and so the really solid running back room. Wide receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Marvin Jones, Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond, and Jamison Williams, who is suspended, and he has dipped, guys. He's dropping down into like the 30s for wide receivers in Dynasty. Tight end, Sam Laporta, everybody's favorite tight end now. I remember we talked about him way earlier. Tight end 14, Brock Wright and James Mitchell. So that's kind of how their depth chart plays out. I think it's interesting values here, some fun. A lot of a lot of question marks a little bit with the running back ADP where it's going. Let's go to the running back room first. Jeff, what do you think about that running back room? Monty's going at running back 32, Gibbs at running back 6. So that's kind of how they're getting valued there. Are you nervous about the split here, or do you think that Gibbs is going to be kind of the PPR guy that we expect him to be?
I would be expecting him to be that PPR guy that you're hunting for. I think I've got it split down a target share for Gibbs of 13% target share. That works out to about 78 targets in that Lions offense is kind of where I think it's landing. And then Montgomery with grabbing about another 36 targets. So I think at about 60 receptions, close to 500 yards, I think is in play for Gibbs when it comes to receiving. The rushing share, I feel good about not having a third running back in that room, because that is the one area that we saw them play around a little bit with getting Justin Jackson involved, as well as Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift as the season went along. And so Craig Reynolds is that third running back. And so as long as you're sticking with two, I think that stays nice and clean. And I think both of them are going to be options that you can put into their lineup. If they would have added like a big back guy or a bigger body that might take goal line work, that's where I would be concerned about the fantasy prospects. But no, I'm not concerned at all. I think that there's going to be plenty of room for both of them to have value, just like we saw in glimpses last year with Williams and DeAndre Swift.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a little rich for my liking for Gibbs. Even in Dynasty, I think you're looking at tempered production this first year. I know that seems to be a hot take at this point, but I do think that there are still some like aging veterans that are going to still finish fairly high. You know, I think guys like Joe Mixon that are certainly going behind Jahmyr Gibbs in dynasty leagues. I think that's a guy that could finish well ahead of him for this year. I do wonder what that goal line work does look like, because while Jamal Williams was super efficient and got a lot of the touchdowns, if I'm picking one of these two guys to be that goal line back, it's probably David Montgomery. And so you're hoping that Gibbs gets the pass catching work, which I do project that. I have him, I think, my running back 13 or something like that right now. But I do think that RB6 is just a little bit rich for me, even in Dynasty. Do you have any takes on the running backs, Kevin?
Just real quick, if you're going to take Gibbs where he's going right now, just wait and you could take him, but be sure to pair him with like a Dalvin Cook or Kamara, or even like when you're looking at like James Conner, someone that has immediate production to where you can kind of counterbalance maybe if he doesn't have those outstanding production this year. Like, you can win your dynasty leagues with two running back twos. You can. Like, there's possibility, especially if you build through that wide receiver, rounds 3 through 6, whatever the case may be. So yeah, to Christian's point, I do agree that maybe temper expectations a little bit, because I do think that we're thinking like 18, 19 points per game. It might not be there yet. I mean, you guys are the projection guys. I'm not. But then if you get someone like, Joe Mixon later, or something to pair with him to where you're like, hey, we get that immediate production here. I build through my wide receivers and that where you can kind of use them. I think that, and then I do think that Gibbs could come on towards the end. Like, we could see Gibbs kind of get more involved. We see it there. And then that's how you win your league. So yeah, I do think that running back room, how you mention it, that's how I would kind of approach it and attack it.
Yeah. So wide receivers, we should probably talk about Jamison Williams, right? Because
Yeah.
I think at wide receiver 37, that's a, a value. Here's the thing though. Is he going to accumulate value in those first 6 weeks? Probably not. We haven't. The thing with wide receivers is their value tends to fluctuate quite a bit. We've talked about, Breece Hall coming off that injury. He's kind of held his value. We see guys like Jonathan Taylor, who had a down year last year. Running backs hold their value. Wide receivers, there are so many of them that people panic. And I think that's what's currently happening with Jameson. But at that price point, like, give me that. I still think that Jameson has a chance to be maybe not the number one target getter, but I do think that he has the opportunity to be the one that teams focus on a little bit. And for that, I think he's going to have some fantasy success. So I think at this value, like, that's what I'm scooping. That's like the sleeper, I guess, even though it's a name that everyone kind of knows. But I think when he comes back, I don't think we're going to see him eased into the offense like he was last year.
What do you think, Jeff, on Jameson? Same thing?
No, I think that I could see his price continue to be depressed as we get closer to the season, to see people start to freak out about those points not. All right, we're gonna have to restart. Am I here? Yeah. Can you hear me?
You're here.
Yeah.
Everything went like very robotic for when Christian was talking, and then when you cut to me, it like all like turned to black circles, and so I think we're back. All right.
Okay. I'll jump. I'll ask you the same question. We'll go 17, so it makes it easy. What do you think about Jameson Williams, Jeff?
I like him, but I do think that the value will continue to be depressed as people start to get worried about those points not being in their lineup. I think overall, long term, he has the potential, the ability to be the wide receiver one in this Lions offense. I mean, he was drafted almost inside the top 10, even with that injury, coming off that injury. And I think that a lot of, especially around the fantasy community, he's viewed as a field stretcher. But I think that if you watch him in Alabama, that 1 year in Alabama, he was used a lot more underneath and a lot more get the ball in his hands and allow him to create because of that speed. And so I think last year in the role that when he was eased in, he was also in that field stretcher role. And so I think that there is the thought that he's going to only be a boom bust player, plus already having the suspension on it. And that feeds into the value going down. But I think people are going to be wrong, because I think that as long as Jared Goff is the quarterback, I don't know how many deep shots are going to be in that offense. I think that they're going to scheme up different ways to get different players involved in the intermediate game and allow them to create after the catch. That's the way that offense seems to be structured, based upon having Jared Goff and having the talent that they do have.
Yeah, I think so. I think his value there, I would say this, I think his ADP value is much different than like his trade value. People are still very high on Jameson. Like a few trades I've seen, Javonte Williams, Jameson, some other pieces mixed in. Like there are still value in Jameson high. The one thing I want to talk about real quick, tight end is whatever to me in that position, because I think Laporta could get some, but we're gonna have to temper our expectations there. The quarterback, Jared Goff and Hendon Hooker. I've been seeing a lot of people take Hendon Hooker early second in rookie drafts. And like I had a question. I even had a question today. This is why I'm mentioning it. Who should I take here at 203? Hendon Hooker. And I said, no, do not do that, because I just don't see do you guys see a realistic path for Hendon Hooker to be a starting quarterback here? I think they like Goff. I think they're going to give a contract extension to Goff. I think Hendon Hooker is just a security blanket to where he's not even going to play that much this year, even if he was ready to go. I'm kind of out on Hooker at ADP. I think I'm out on Hooker as completely. Or am I wrong there? Or do you think, we're good with Hendon Hooker kind of being the out category?
I have not been drafting Hendon Hooker. I think that when I compare him probably maybe to like Davis Mills, like that type, where I just, the valuation I think seems pretty aggressive to me, because you think back to that Davis Mills, Kellen Mond class, or we've seen guys go kind of in that that went late day 2, early day 3, that I think probably are more realistically late second round picks or early third round picks in rookie leagues. And even if they do show flashes of playing, it's hard to recoup real value for them. It's like one of those things of like, well, he's going to be the starting quarterback, but I don't know that anybody's really going to ever buy in on him being the starting quarterback unless he's plays elite, and then you don't want to trade him for anything.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of that thing on that. And I have not been drafting him. I found myself in a position where I just haven't been grabbing him a lot, even in some leagues. I remember he going into late round or early round 3, and I still didn't grab him.
Yeah.
That just goes back to my Ben Johnson being gone thing too, because like this offense is great right now, and I think Hendon Hooker would be a perfect fit. But like Kevin said, I think they like Goff. They've kind of expressed how much they like Goff, and all the reports indicate that they like Goff. And Goff isn't that old. I know it seems like it, but Goff probably has 5 or 6 years, and Hendon Hooker is probably going to end up a free agent before he gets meaningful playing time. And even then, I don't know what team would sign him to a large enough contract. So I'm out.
Yeah. All right, let's go. Let's jump over to the Packers. So Green Bay Packers, new era, baby. We got Jordan Love at the starting quarterback position here. Sean Clifford, backup quarterback. I can't believe I still have to say his name here. All right, running back room, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, Lou Nichols, wide receiver, Christian Watson, Romeo Dubs, Jaden Reed, Grant DuBose, Dontavian Wicks at the wide receiver room. Tight end is Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. This is a tough depth chart. This is a very tough depth chart for Dynasty. There's a lot of ambiguity. I said that word right. Look at that, history teacher. Out there, especially the wide receiver position. Let's go there. Let's look at this because there's some Christian Watson love out there. People have him very high. I probably have him the lowest out of everybody. We left him off when we did our combined tiers, and we're getting a little hate here on the YouTube channel. We appreciate that. So what do we think here? Because I think Romeo Dubs is the best value in this room. And there's a lot of talk about Jaden Reed and Watson, and it sounds like Romeo's having a hell of an offseason so far in terms of camps. Where are you going with this in here, Christian?
Man, so I think all 3 of these guys are good values. I know that sounds a little crazy, but I think Watson, Dobbs, and Reed, I think they're all going to be fantasy performers at some point. I think Dobbs is currently Jordan Love's favorite. We've seen that from camp. I think the Watson breakout, a lot of Packers beat reporters are saying how explosive he looks and, how he's showing signs of being that dominant wide receiver 1. I just think when you start to look at where they're going, wide receiver 22 for Watson, I think he could probably eclipse that even this year. Same thing. I think Dobbs is the best value for sure, because I think that could be your PPR guy. He's working out of the slot a little bit more. I think that Love tends to target that area of the field. But then you've got Jaden Reed, who a lot of people who studied him really, really liked. He was one of my guys that I really liked as well. So like you said, this one's really tough for me because as I start to flesh out how they produce this year, it's difficult to figure out a target share, because I think there's a chance that all of these guys get a piece of the pie. It's just that one's going to be which one stays healthy all year. And I think that's going to sway these ADPs come this time next year.
I think they're going to be run heavy, to be honest with you. I think they're going to be running a lot more than kind of the people are looking at. And especially when you have Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, like that was one thing when I did my first projections, the way that it shook out. Aaron Jones was like running back 6, and I was like, that's very aggressive on Aaron Jones. And so I had to play with things a little bit there on just sitting comfortably with that. But I do expect they're going to run the ball, and I think that Aaron Jones is going to be a primary target in this. But I agree that all 3 wide receivers, I think, will be involved in getting into the tight ends even. I think that you'll see this team will play a lot of different formations because they can play 12 personnel with those 2 rookie tight ends. Josiah DeGuara can be involved in the field either at tight end or fullback. They can just do a lot of different things. And so I think they're going to try their very best to protect Jordan Love in his first season playing. And so that's kind of the way I see it shake out, and a lower volume, potentially run heavy offense that I don't know is going to be particularly that good.
So okay. All right. Thanks. I will say this for the running back spot. I talked about AJ Dillon a little bit. I'm going to be talking about him here in my next short for the channel. Is he like a standalone guy again? Are we going down that route? Because we went down that route last year and said he's a standalone guy. Do you think he's standalone, or do you think that you have to kind of just, if Jones goes down, he's an injury away stash to being maybe a low end running back 1, running back 2?
I mean, no, I don't think he's ever really been a standalone guy. I think people thought that's what was going to happen and that he was going to overtake Aaron Jones. But my take on Aaron Jones is that he is still very, very good at football. And I know he's getting to that age cliff where everyone's like, okay, he's going to start to decline. Certainly. But then when you watch him play and you understand like how he wins, I think those types of backs do have a little more lifespan. And so I'm always bullish on Aaron Jones. AJ Dillon to me is just, did he get a new contract yet?
No,
this is contract year, right? Yes. So what happens then? Do they bring him back and then maybe they transition? But this is one where like, if I have AJ Dillon, I'm getting rid of it. I actually did make a trade this offseason where I kept Jones instead of AJ Dillon because I think Jones has more value, which is reflected in ADP. But I think when you actually ask people, I think people would prefer Dillon because of the age and the potential, but I'm out on that. So.
No standalone. And it's I don't know. It's I think that he's like an RB2 target. Ideally, he would be like an RB2 target on a 0 running back or 0 wide receiver, 0 RB team. But I don't know. The evaluations are kind of weird with being able to build those types of teams this year. You can't really do it because they just wide receivers are flying off the board in redraft leagues and even in dynasty leagues. It seems to everybody's caught up on grabbing your quarterbacks and wide receivers. That seems to be viewed as the meta way to play now, and you can get so much value out of the running backs either by going contrarian early when running backs probably should be going, or by going the other direction and grabbing a couple wide receivers and still hitting some running backs.
Jeff Bell just said meta on this podcast. First time in 3 years I've ever heard Jeff Bell utter the word meta. Quarterback room real quick. Jordan Love's getting pretty but priced at a ceiling, I think. Quarterback 18 going ahead of Jared Goff and some of these other guys. I'm not comfortable with Jordan Love at quarterback 18. I was much comfortable with Jordan Love at quarterback 26 this like going into the off-season stuff. And I will say this about the quarterback. I see a lot of guys touting Jaden Reed and talking about how Christian Watson's going to be legitimate wide receiver 2, maybe 1, but then they also hate Jordan Love. And I'm like, those things don't mix. I know like those he's still got to be able to produce these type of wide receivers in fantasy. And we've seen that. As far as dynasty goes, you're stuck with Jordan Love. You can't really get rid of him because no one's trading for him based on that value, I don't think, unless you sell a little bit lower than what you want. But if you've been holding on to Jordan Love for 5 years or however long it's been, you might as well just ride it out, in my opinion. Anything on the quarterbacks before we jump to Christian's favorite team?
Jordan Love's not going to be a rusher. Yeah, I don't think. And so I think he's going to have a pretty low floor and low ceiling.
That's one thing. I think Packers fans too believe that he is. And I tweeted something about quarterback rushing yards is what I tweeted about. And someone came back and said, Jordan Love's going to be in the top 10. And I said, that's not really his game though. And it really never was. Like, he's good outside of structure. I think that was one thing I loved about his film back in the day, 12 years ago when he was drafted. But no, I think you're right. I think we're looking at like a back end QB2 type of deal. So a little rich.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. We have a soft
like
spot.
him.
I know. I still like him too. I hope he outperforms our expectations and he proves people wrong. That's kind of how I look at Jordan Love, but I will let him do that on probably another roster at quarterback 18. That's also my analysis there. All right, let's go over to the Bears. So Bears, Justin Fields, quarterback room, ADP right now going back into first, QB 8, 7, depending on rankings. PJ Walker is also there. Running back is a mess. Donta Foreman, Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson, pick your poison in that room. Wide receiver, I think, is a little bit clearer picture. DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, Chase Claypool, Quantum St. Brown, Velus Jones is still there. Tight end, Cole Kmet, Robert Tonyan. We talked about Tonyan a little bit on the last show when we did the tight end tiers. What are we looking at here with this running back room? I think we should go there. I think Justin Fields, I think we all here expect him to take that next leap. And I think running back 8 is fine. But that running back room is tough because you have Donta Foreman, who showed flashes last year being a real running back too. Khalil Herbert, it's funny. A lot of people outside the Bears fans love Khalil Herbert. Bears fans do not like Khalil Herbert. It's a weird kind of area there. And then Roschon Johnson was everybody's favorite running back in the draft class. Everybody was talking about this guy, and then he goes here. I have a feeling I know where Jeff's going to go, but Jeff, if you had to pick one of these guys, so running back 46 for Foreman, Herbert running back 39, Johnson running back 36, where are you going?
I'm going to take Herbert at that valuation. That's where I would land. I think the troubling thing is I don't expect any of them to be overly involved in the passing game. And so if you're not overly involved in the passing game and you're playing in an offense where Justin Fields is probably clipping off 1,000 yards, I think that it's you're just kind of ending up with like a bye week fill-in guy. I kind of tend to believe, and you're kind of hoping for a touchdown, and otherwise you don't get a touchdown. You get like the classic, like the old Damian Harris stat line where you get 6.5 points or whatever it might be if you don't get any touchdowns because there's no balls being caught. And that's kind of the way that I view this running back room shaking out, that you probably ideally, I mean, I don't know, you hate to say it, but you ideally probably need an injury to somebody to really start to like realize some value on some guys. But that's the way I kind of stand. And it's just not going to be, I don't expect passing volume. And I think a pretty equal somewhat with Herbert being in the lead distribution of rushing yards.
Yeah, this is a running back room I don't want to touch. Personally, though, I think from a dynasty perspective, I think Khalil Herbert is the correct pick. I think Roschon Johnson is a fine player. I think that he adds more value to the Bears than he adds to fantasy rosters and dynasty rosters. I think that's an important distinction as well, because I think he's going to do those dirty things the right way and then stay on the field. But Justin Fields really doesn't use his running back a whole lot in the passing game. Now, David Montgomery had some success as a pass catcher. I agree with you, Jeff. I think I'd take Deontay Foreman at this price simply because we've seen some success from Deontay Foreman, and I think there's a non-zero chance that he does lead that room this year. And so I may as well wait 7 more spots and take him if I don't think that any of them are really anything. But if I'm being completely honest, I wouldn't draft any one of these guys in a dynasty startup right now.
Well, as someone who's drafted Foreman a few times this year, I will say I'll take Foreman. I just think it's like, and I didn't take him as like, you're running back 1 or 2, but you're really looking for upside and touchdowns. Like, all right, who's going to score touchdowns here in the red zone? If Fields doesn't, I think Foreman might be able to play that. But I do like Jeff's point. Unfortunately, I like Jeff's point about, hey, you're really looking at bye week fillers here. That's really what this is. Outside of that, I mean, if we're avoiding that, DJ Moore, I think for all of us is a smash at wide receiver 23. Like, I really do. Jeff wrote a really good piece. God, I hate it. I hate having to I hate having to give Jeff compliments, but he wrote a really good piece on Moore. And I think the thing I liked, he highlighted a lot, was the screen game, but also kind of the utilization of like Fields can push it down the field. And I think it was like 9.6 air yards or whatever it was. The number was, and like Moore fits that. And this is the first quarterback and really the system that Moore has that fits all of his strengths. We haven't seen the upside yet. We've seen the upside of Moore in a system that's kind of like, made him ineffective in my opinion. Like, he's been able to persevere with his talent. We haven't seen a system highlight his strengths. I really think the system is going to do that just based on what we've been reading, the spotlight that I had there. I do like Mooney at wide receiver 62 though, because to me, he's an injury away stash, because if Moore went down, Mooney's there. I mean, we saw Mooney a little bit with flashes. Claypool at wide receiver 74. I'll let you guys talk about your love for Moore, but I do think Moore is a value right now. And if you're in that 6th to 7th round in there and you're looking for your wide receiver 2 or even 3, if you're building a wide receiver build like Jeff's been talking about with Dynasty, that's a smash play for Moore, because he's going to hit on that. He's going to hit that value, and I think he'll exceed it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the buzz, the narrative around DJ Moore is the lack of overall passing volume. But I think that it's just he's miles above everybody else on the depth chart, and he's going to be playing with his best quarterback of his career. But yeah, you mentioned that spotlight, and thank you so much for the kind words, Kevin. I always appreciate that. But when you look at Moore, I think the thing that with him, it's one, he has that big play splash ability where Justin Fields really made hay last year in the passing game. 2, I talked about involvement of the screen game. I think he's going to be involved in the run game. I think that it's one of those things that you start to just stack, like here's a splash play here, here's a couple screen passes, here's a run, and all of a sudden the guy's clipping off 18 points per game, even if it is a lower passing volume team.
Yeah, I do. So the devil's advocate here is that the Bears beat writers are all in on that connection right now, which is great. That's fantastic news. Justin Fields has been hyper targeting DJ Moore in the early stages of OTAs, and then the mandatory mini camp that they're at right now. Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool are sidelined right now. And so when you see all of that, I think DJ Moore's ADP is going to start to get up there as like 16, 17. And that's where like, those are the points where I'm a little more hesitant, because while I do believe in Fields, I still think this is going to be a run heavy offense. I think they're going to pass the ball quite a bit more, but it's still going to be leaning run heavy. And so I hope this ADP holds, and this is where you can get DJ Moore, because I think, kind of like the Packers, I think all three of these guys are good values. I even like Claypool at 74. Mooney and Claypool are set to be free agents after this year. So this is one where you're like, okay, maybe I'll project a different situation for these guys and maybe they can go succeed. But yeah, I really like all three Bears receivers right now.
Yeah. I still think he's a value. So like, who would you rather have in Dynasty? DJ Moore or Christian Watson?
DJ Moore.
Jeff?
In Dynasty, I'm probably taking Watson, just because.
Really?
I mean, where's the value? 23.
I mean,
2.
Yeah.
I think that you can get. I don't know. DJ Moore's weird valuation in Dynasty. DJ Moore is value. So the way DJ Moore works in Dynasty is there's one person in your Dynasty league that believes in DJ Moore more than every other person in your Dynasty league, and they already have DJ Moore on their roster. And people say, well, that's the case for every player, but especially DJ Moore is just one of those guys that there are certain people out there that are absolutely in love with him. And so it's funny because if you're the guy that's holding DJ Moore and you try to trade DJ Moore, the market and what in my experience is very, very tepid. Whereas like I think with Christian Watson, kind of if I'm moving off those guys, like my ideal is just give me a random 24 first that could end up anywhere, and then give me like a lower under the radar production guy that I just kind of like a backup running back or something like that is kind of what I want to do. And it's been in my experience in a league that I'm rebuilding in that I really want to capitalize on more. I haven't been able to pull that type of trade off, but I do kind of think that I would be able to pull that trade off with Watson with relative ease.
All right. Well, that's the NFC North. We're going to wrap that up and just talk about the dynasty and everything there of who we wanted. Let's get into the South.
First, we love dads at Football Guys, and as a way of saying thanks to the dads out there, we are offering a limited time 10% discount off of a Football Guys premium subscription for this season at the link footballguys.com/Father's Day. Whether you need a gift for the fantasy football obsessed dad in your life or the dad who's too busy to set his lineup, we've got you covered with everything he needs to win his league. Or you can just gift one to yourself at a sweet discount. We've continued to make our premium subscriptions better and better this year with new and improved tools, major additions to our Dynasty and IDP content, exclusive Q&As with Football Guys staff, and much more. Also that we can help you win more at fantasy football. Head to footballguys.com/Father's Day. Once again, that is footballguys.com/Father's Day to take advantage of this discount and let us help you crush fantasy football this year. The promo does end after Father's Day, which is this week, so don't wait.
All right, let's get into the NFC South. Let's look at here. Quarterbacks with the NFC South with the Buccaneers. So we're going to start with the Buccaneers. This division is going to go a little quicker. So Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask, those are your quarterback room in there. Running back, Rachaad White, and then just pretty much a lot of nothing. Chase Edmonds, Keyshawn Vaughn, Ronnie Brown, Sean Tucker, a guy that we've been having a lot of conversation about in our Discord. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Russell Gage, Trey Palmer, Devin Tompkins, Raheem Jarrett at wide receiver. Shout out Raheem. Tight end K. Dotton and Paige Durham. As far as this group goes, Rashad is fun because I think he has a ton of volume out there for him. We've kind of talked about him. other than that, I don't know what to do with the wide receivers because I don't really know if they're going to finish on this team this year. I don't know what the Bucs are going to do. I think they're clearly tanking for Caleb Williams. I think they want to go get Caleb Williams or a quarterback. I think Godwin's a value at wide receiver 21, especially if he moves on, but he did just get that contract. I don't know if he's going to move on. I think Mike is going to be there. Are you buying either one of these wide receivers, Jeff?
Well, it's one of those that I do that think it's going to be ugly this year, I think, for the receivers. And so I'm actually selling Godwin. Godwin might be my most sold player in Dynasty, to be honest with you, because my expectation is you're selling on name value right now, and I'm still seeing kind of some crazy valuation. So let me ask you guys a question. Would you rather have straight up Chris Godwin or Jordan Addison?
Jordan Addison.
Yeah, that's
Easily.
the deal that
Pretty
I made
easy.
about a month ago during a rookie draft, that I traded Chris Godwin straight up for the 109 and I got Addison. So that's kind of the valuation that is out there that I've seen on Godwin. I think that people are going to, as much as like the tank for Caleb is like kind of been talked about, I do expect that we'll hit a window where people are more concerned about the lack of points that you're getting week to week from Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and less looking forward to the future of what might happen with Caleb Williams, because I think that they're going to become buys, and they're going to become pretty nice buys. I expect the season goes on. And then if you slam Caleb Williams in that lineup or Drake May into that lineup, it's going to be that value is going to shoot up, is what my expectation is. And so I think that you can't get off Evans right now. I've tried, and I just, you can't. And getting him, I've got him in a couple of startup leagues because I like the value he's landing. Like, I got him like the 10th round in a 12-team league, and I'll take a shot there on Mike Evans in that range. But I do think Godwin still is going pretty aggressively in those types of things, and you can move him for a decent return on the trade market.
Yeah. I don't have a strong take about these wide receivers because I think you alluded to it, right? So they're going to become buys. I think they do. I mean, they're in the Caleb Williams or Drake May sweepstakes, and there are a couple of other quarterbacks that I think are going to insert their name into being an upgrade from Baker Mayfield. Now, my interesting take, I guess, is that I think this offense could be a little better than what we expect it to be. And I know everyone's going to be like, oh, you love Baker Mayfield. No, I don't. I don't think he's very good. I do think their new offensive coordinator is going to scheme up something similar to what he ran when he wasn't fantasy football successful for the Rams last year, but he looked like there were a couple games where it was like, okay, yeah, I mean, he's fine. He's fine out there. I think that's what you're going to get from Baker this year, is fine. And so I think you could have some weeks where Godwin gets, 9 catches or something like that. I don't expect Evans to be just anything for fantasy football this year for some reason. I don't think that there's going to be a quarterback that can get him the ball downfield. So the other hot take that I have is that Keyshawn Vaughn is the actual RB2 here, and I think that they're going to run the ball a heck ton. And so I think Keyshawn Vaughn probably should be drafted before Sean Tucker and probably before Chase Edmonds, but maybe I'm crazy on that one.
Yeah, because of the quarterback play, I mean, they could be a little bit better, but I think all of these guys, tight ends, wide receivers, are tough. I think the one safest guy is Rachaad White, because I think he's just going to get the volume there. And like you mentioned, we talked about, he could be a low end running back one, excuse me, just because of the volume. Like, he could just be right there. And those are the guys that you're kind of going there. All right, let's jump over to the Panthers. So Carolina, fun. They got Bryce Young, a quarterback, Andy Dalton, running back, Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, Raheem Blackshear, Cameron Peoples, wide receiver, DJ Chark, Terrace Marshall, Adam Thielen, Jonathan Mango, Laviska Shenault, tight end, Hayden Hurst, Ian Thomas, and Tommy Trimble. I think Bryce is going value QB 13 where he probably should be going. I think we've all kind of assumed that's where he's there. Running back wise, Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, they're probably valued correctly. I think Miles is a running back too, low end. What we do with this wide receiver room, I kind of put it out on the social media yesterday to see what people would say. I know that I think me and Christian have liked DJ Chark for a while. I do think DJ Chark, in my opinion, DJ Chark is the most talented wide receiver in this room. I don't know if he can stay healthy though. So it's just it's that area. And if he's going at wide receiver 65, I don't hate that value. He's the second cheapest here. And in Dynasty, I understand that. I understand maybe the Terrace Marshall love. Okay, the first time that me and Christian ever yell at each other, Terrace Marshall, baby. Jonathan Mingo's at wide receiver 51, so he's in there. Jeff, if you had to pick, we know it's not going to be Visca. Out of the other four, who are you taking if you had to pick? Don't give me the I wouldn't do it. Which one? What guy do you put your hat on?
If I had to pick at this
reputation on the line, football guy's hat on. Who are you taking?
In Dynasty, probably Mingo, but
I forgot you're a Mingo guy.
At the value, Marshall. To be honest with you, I mean, wide receiver 87. If you have wide receiver 87, you get dart. You talk about the 18th, 19th, 20th round, and you throw even lower than that on that valuation. You throw a dart on Terrace Marshall. I mean, my real thought on the Panthers wide receiver room is like, every fantasy team should have one of these wide receivers on their team, but also none fantasy teams should have any of these wide receivers on their team is kind of where I look at it. Because you just don't know how it's going to shake out is the thing of it.
Well, that's what we're here to do. We're supposed to be analysts, and we're supposed to tell people like what's going to happen.
Grab one late and hope it works for you.
Yeah, that's exactly what you would do.
That's correct. Wide receiver 51 for Mingo is insane to me. That's too high. I think he's my highest that I have ranked right now, and he's down at like 70. And I know, so Bryce Young elevates the offense. That is 100% true. I think this offense is going to be fine. I just don't think that any one player is going to stand out outside of Miles Sanders. I do think, I have him at 17, Miles Sanders. I think that we just watched how Bryce likes to throw to his running back when his running back can catch passes. I think Miles Sanders can. If you're making me answer that question, though, at these values, I would take Chark. I mean, it's close enough to where I have him. It's still too rich for me, and I guess Terrace Marshall is probably the best value, like Jeff said, but it's just, I don't know. I think that's one where he's getting all the camp hype, too, and that's going to start to creep up, too, and then I just don't want any of them, unfortunately.
So as someone who's watched Bryce a lot, and you guys know I love Bryce, and I've seen it, Bryce elevates players. So Christian talked about Miles Sanders. The reason why Bryce will like Miles Sanders, because Bryce is going to be able to kind of get outside the pocket, do that functional athleticism, make plays. Miles Sanders is going to be able to be that guy in the receiving end, a lot of those things, dump offs, like short little cliff, to the sidelines, those things. The two other receivers to me that really kind of complement Bryce Young based on Alabama and those times. Terrace Marshall's one of them because he's big and he could just get it up to him in the end zone and do those type of things in the red zone that we like to see there. And to be quite honest with you, it's DJ Chark to me because he can be that guy that gets behind defenses and kind of he can lead guys and he can. Before I get yelled at in the comments, I'm not saying he's Jameson Williams, but when they did that and they had that when they won the Heisman that year, he did that a lot and led these Jameson a lot in that offense. DJ can do that. And I think Bryce's accuracy will lead himself to a lot of these things. Thielen could be the steal for like redraft because he's going to score touchdowns maybe, but there's no guarantee he's going to be in there in the end zone. So like that's kind of how I look at it from a Bryce perspective. I guess you could say an injury away stash is Hubbard just because he's there. I do think they're all sleepers. So to Jeff's point, yeah, you just take one of these. Don't take two of these guys, right? Like just take one. LaVisca, anybody on the LaVisca train? I see his stock out there.
No.
He's still on rosters.
He's still on rosters for sure. We're still seeing the hype out there. Just wanted to go there. All right, let's Debo. Remember that? We everybody's Debo. Actually, Luther Burden is. All right, let's go to the Saints. So quarterback room here: Derek Carr, Jameis Winston, Jake Hayner's also out there. Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams, Kendre Miller, Eno Benjamin. Wide receivers: Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, ? Rashid Shaheed, who is still just going to ruin dynasty managers out there. Brian Edwards, A.T. Perry, Traquan Smith. A lot of wide receivers. Don't necessarily if they all equal him there. Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, and Taysom Hill. I know Juwan is someone I wrote about recently as being kind of a sleeper at the tight end position in Dynasty too, and even in redraft because I think he just scores touchdowns. And I think and Derek Carr, we have seen him target Waller, seen him target that tight end position. He could be an interesting one, especially in the red zone. What are you doing? What stands out to you about this room, Jeff? Anything in there?
In the receiver room or the tight end room? I'm sorry.
No, anywhere. I don't care. You pick. We're anywhere. Running back room. What the hell are you doing with that? You taking Kendre Miller and just going with it?
The Shaheed value, I kind of like that. At wide receiver 77, I think that he's a explosive player that I think if something happens to Michael Thomas, he could step up into a big role. And Henry Miller, yes, of course. I think that Alvin Kamara is going to be out. I do still think Alvin Kamara will be suspended. And Jamal Williams saw almost no passing usage last year with the Lions. And so I think that Miller is in a prime opportunity where he could be a major volume receiver in this offense pretty quickly. And so that's one that I do kind of like a lot. And then Olave, of course, gotta stand for Olave. But I think that the Olave breakout is already upon us, and that will continue.
There are three glaring dynasty values to me right here. Kamara, who I know will get suspended, or probably will get suspended. At RB30, I think you're getting a couple years still of him being good. Personally, I know once again that age cliff, it's right there, but the way he wins is I think he can still succeed and outperform that for a couple years. Michael Thomas is one of my favorite selections in dynasty startups right now. I know I've done this before, but we saw flashes. I mean, he averaged a touchdown per game last year. It was 3 games, but he was still successful, massively successful last year, and looked like the receiver that he was when he led the league in receptions. And then Jawan Johnson, draft Jawan Johnson. I mean, I think I tweeted, yesterday, a couple days ago now, easiest pick in fantasy drafts. For redraft, for dynasty, it doesn't matter the format. Jawan Johnson to me is going to be a top 10 tight end this year. And so at tight end 15 in dynasty, and when you look at the landscape, I mean, he could be more than just a top 10 tight end. So I love those values there.
I have a take on Olave. Let me know what you guys think here. I think he's getting drafted at a ceiling. I think he's wide receiver 8. Do you see him getting in the tiers ahead of that? The Waddle and the maybe even Amon-Ra, even though I'm not as high on Amon-Ra as some. But I don't have Olave at 8. I think I have him 11. I prefer him in that area. Can he get up in those tiers where you're I think 8's pretty much his ceiling, right?
You can outscore Waddle. I mean, I think, but that's my opinion.
In Dynasty, though, for Dynasty value, you think that he'd ever be above Waddle or in that same tier?
Well, if he has more points than Waddle this year, then
okay.
Yes, because that's how Dynasty
that's
works.
That's not how it works. No, it does not.
It works. This guy's kind of younger, and he had more points, so he is going to go higher.
That's not how that goes. You know that. It's perceived value because Waddle, people believe, can be a wide receiver 2 or 3 as far as overall, where Olave, I don't know. I think a lot of people, because I got asked today, who would you rather have, Olave and Garrett Wilson? I said, well, Garrett Wilson. And then they kind of argued. They were like, oh, well, I think Olave is closer than that. And I said, I don't think so. Maybe my evaluations are off. But I do think wide receiver 8 for me is ceiling for me for Olave. But that could just be because I'm a hater. That's also relevant there.
I still love you, even if you're a hater.
I think you're right, though. I think that is the ceiling, assuming that everyone else is healthy, right? At least for this year. Maybe in 3 years, we're talking about, okay, Michael Thomas is gone. Derek Carr is probably gone at that point too. I mean, I know he's got a big fat deal, but I think 12 to 15 is where I'm comfortable with him. I have him at 12, I think. So.
Yeah. And Derek Carr is 100% not throwing him the ball this year just to piss off dynasty managers. He's going to be, A.T. Perry somehow is going to be the wide receiver 1 on that roster, just because that's what Derek Carr does. He just kind of moves it around there. All right, let's go to the last team here, the Falcons. And if you haven't noticed, these depth charts are anybody can win this damn division in terms of this. This is why these guys are kind of going for it, I think. Falcons quarterback, Desmond Ridder. We're going to have a conversation about Ridder. Quarterback 30, interesting. Taylor Heineke's in there. Running back, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, Cordell Patterson, Caleb Huntley. Wide receiver, Drake London. And then I was going through their depth chart. Wow. Mac Hollins, Scott Miller, and Frank Darby. Frank Darby, Arizona State. Shout out. Tight end, Kyle Pitts, and then Johnny Smith somehow is going to be the tight end 1 of that room. Just kidding. I hope. But let's get into Ridder. Jeff, is he more than just a 1-year filler on dynasty rosters?
No, I don't think so. And I think that, I don't know. I want to talk myself into Ridder very hard because the athleticism is there, and I think that he could have a rushing floor. But when I worked the numbers out, it was way lower on Ridder than I thought I would end up being. And so that concerns me because I think that you can paint yourself a scenario where because of the talent of London, Pitts, and Bijan Robinson, if those guys are all getting the mass volume of the targets and Ritter is adding some rushing yards on top of yourself, then, you might be flirting with even a back-end quarterback one, but I don't see it getting up to that point.
Christian, same with you.
Unfortunately, man, I'm with you. I want him to succeed, and I think that he's got a lot of the tools to succeed in the Arthur Smith offense. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity to go out and get some of the veteran guys. I think Ryan Tannehill is going to be a Falcon come 2024. And I think Arthur Smith would prefer that to Desmond Ritter. And there's not a whole lot of job security, I guess, in terms of, sure, maybe he's like the QB 20 this year and he's, vastly outperforming this ADP, but I think it is a 1-year thing. And when you start to I was just looking at my rankings, who would you rather? Will Levis on the potential that he becomes the starter in Tennessee, or Desmond Ritter, who we know is the starter for this year alone?
I'll take Levis, in my opinion. And I don't like Levis whatsoever, but I think that, I don't know. I think I'd bet on Levis, to be honest with you, because he still has that extra year, right? Like if Ritter doesn't work out this year, he's done. I don't think he's going to get a shot. Levis still has a chance next year to kind of be that guy right where Ritter's at. So maybe you get back in Levis this year and then next year, right? So maybe there's some value there. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. Jeff, what about you?
I think that the Titans are going to be a better football team than people expect, but I think that I would do probably Levis. But I do think that I don't know. I'm losing my mind because I'm talking myself into the Titans right now. They haven't won a game since I went to Christmas lights before Thanksgiving. So,
yeah,
right.
I mean, I think that's all fair though. And Ritter, I have Levis ranked ahead of Ritter, and I had Ritter as my QB2 last year. It's just, I don't know, Howell or Ritter. I know we'll get into Howell in a future show, but next week maybe.
Ritter.
I think Howell.
Yeah, I'd take Howell because I think he runs the ball more, which is crazy to say. I just think he's.
No, we're not doing that. Do not start the show that he's a dual threat quarterback. I will lose my mind.
He's not dual threat, but he's athletic enough. Ritter is too. It's just that's not a piece of this offense as we currently know it. So.
Ritter has so many weapons. That's the thing. Bijan, Drake, and Kyle Pitts are legitimate. Top 12 for sure. When you're looking at just talent perspective, that's the thing that gets me with Ritter is he's got so much. All he's got to do is be Trent Dilfer-ish and score some touchdowns on the ground. Sorry for all my younger crowd. You guys don't know who Trent Dilfer is. Just Google it. Kyle. Let's do Kyle Bowler. You guys know who Kyle Bowler is? Just kidding. Jeff knows who Kyle Bowler is. Christian's got Kyle Bowler out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just look at that. Gosh, got so many weapons out there. The other guys, I mean, you're drafting Drake, you're drafting Kyle Pitts in that area. Who would you rather want though in a dynasty? Because they're going around the same area. So who you feel more comfortable with? Pitts because of positional advantage?
Yes, definitely.
No, Christian, you take London?
I get concerned with Pitts still. We talked about it last week on the tight end show. It's just, I think from an age perspective, at that value, you're losing that. You might lose value. Travis Kelce came out and said, "I'm not retiring until something changes." And so, is Kyle Pitts going as the tight end 1 this time next year? Probably, but I think there's a chance that Drake London outperforms him this year in terms of just overall fantasy points. And so I think Drake London has a better opportunity to increase in value, whereas Pitts is kind of tight end 1. That's the ceiling, right?
What do you think, Jeff?
Number one is the ceiling. Yes, for most.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Number 1, yes. I don't know. That's where I don't know. I think that London. I worry about London, to be honest with you, because I think that the addition of Bijan Robinson, if there's any scale back on London's target volume and overall the Falcons passing volume doesn't get there, then if Drake London doesn't hit 1,000 yards this year and the Falcons don't throw the ball a lot and they don't get a massive upgrade at quarterback, what are you sitting there with a dynasty asset on London? Whereas at least with Pitts, I can talk myself into positional value.
It's fair too.
will say though, people are really sour on Pitts and not very sour on like London. So like when you're looking at that too from like a dynasty market perspective, like I know you wrote like a 7,000 word spotlight, so you love Pitts, but like and then Christian Christian wrote a 7,000 word spotlight on London. I love how we're just diving into this bad boy, these two areas here. Running back room, it's Bijan. I'm pretty comfortable drafting Bijan. We've kind of talked about it as well. Tyler Algier, I guess injury way stash. I don't see necessarily standalone value there. I really feel like he's got to have something happen in front of him in terms of that. Cordell Patterson, are we kicking that train again, Jeff? Or are you out?
I'm out now. I think that Bijan is going to eat enough of it. But okay. So if they get creative in the Arthur Smith offense, and if they use Jonnu Smith, play 12 personnel, and create an offense where they're using Cordero Patterson as like essentially the wide receiver 2 or the wide receiver 2.5 with Kyle Pitts. I think that there is a chance that if they're go to that place that he could be on the field quite often and return some sort of value, especially if he scores touchdowns. But I don't know. That's just my mind playing games with myself.
Okay. So I've never liked Cordell Patterson, but with the wide receiver room the way it is, like you kind of mentioned, talk about the weapons and stuff like that, and with the scheme, like they could use Patterson over Mac Hollins. Like there's realistic areas where they're going to have to use those guys. I just want to touch down from Frank Darby. I talked about him a lot in Debbie, but yeah, that's the area there. So there we go. There's our kind of our show today. We looked at the NFC North. We dived into the NFC South, trying to help you guys identify values, understand that understand context of these guys overall, and just like who we would draft, who we wouldn't draft, sleepers maybe out there, any bust really. I mean, I think with the NFC South, not a lot of fantasy assets out there that you want to own. Like if you have them, I mean, besides Bijan and some of these other guys, I think that's a question mark. But I do want to highlight one really good point that Christian brought up. Alvin Kamara to me is a value in all formats as well back in the day, just to kind of talk about that. Like I do like him in builds where you're kind of waiting on that running back. So appreciate you guys. We'll be diving in next week. We're going to NFC again, take a talk about the other conference divisions, kind of diving in what that looks like next week, June 22nd. We'll be back 1 p.m. Eastern. Until then, I'm Kevin Coleman.
I'm Jeff Bell.
And I'm Christian Williams, and you just watched the Football Guys College Football Show.